Hi, friends. I'm coming at you with a completely different format today for a few reasons. I've been really wanting to make this Iridescent Tones video. I love this topic, the religions of the Cosmere. I have spent so much time researching this religion and all of the others, and I've really been wanting to bring it to you. But if I'm honest, I was starting to hold myself in my YouTube content to a certain threshold that was getting really hard for me to maintain as I've been transitioning into my new job, which, if you don't know, I am the new social media marketing coordinator for Brotherwise Games. So I'm a full-time employee for Brotherwise, which is such a dream come true, but that means that I'm managing socials for a gigantic company that has a lot of things going on. So basically, full disclosure, full timeline, I was going to have this video out in February because my Steel Ministry video came out in January, if you remember. And in February was when the interview process started for this job, and there were a few things I had to do for that I poured all of my time and energy into because I really wanted this job, and it paid off because I got it, obviously. But that really kind of set me back, and then along came March, which is when I was transitioning from my old very demanding job into this new job and getting started with that, and that took a lot of time and energy. I'm also in school, so it's just been a lot, and I was kind of not allowing myself to come to sit down to make these videos because I was feeling like there was no way that I could. I needed it to be a certain way. I needed it to look a certain way. I needed it to feel a certain way. But I don't know why I felt that way, because the content that I get the most supportive messages under are the ones where I'm just sitting down talking to you. And that's it. So today I'm going to sit down and talk to you about the iridescent tones, and we're just going to get through it. Treat it like a podcast episode, I guess. Not all my content will be this way. There will absolutely come a time where I am back sitting in my chair with my fancy lights and my fancy camera and my fancy backdrop and really selling you the fantasy. But today, I just want to strip the layers back and talk to you about this damn religion. So, now that the intro's passed, well, intro's not quite passed. I do have one last thing I want to talk about. I have been running with a team of other content creators the Cosmere Nerds for Mental Health Patreon this year. Today I did the math. I'm filming this on May 3rd, which it's the beginning of Mental Health Awareness Month, and I did the math this morning. We have raised well over $6,200 for Nerd HQ. That money goes directly to Nerd HQ, and it helps fund therapy for those who otherwise couldn't afford it. For a lot of people, therapy is a life-saving, life-changing service, and it can be really hard to afford in so many places. And so Nerd HQ, with their partner Timely Care, are able to help make that a lot easier for a lot of people. There are hundreds of people who are getting services paid for through Nerd HQ, and our Patreon helps fund that. So please, if you are a Cosmere nerd and you care about mental health, the link will be in the bio, and I'll probably talk about it again. Please join our Patreon. Every single penny goes directly to Nerd HQ. They set it up. It goes to their accounts, so we don't keep any of it. We don't see any of it. We just see the numbers, which is really encouraging to see how much of a change we've made since we started this. It was like the last few days of December was when we launched. And we are really, really, really excited to keep going. Literally last week, we were on a billboard in Times Square, which is super cool. I'll put a picture of it here. But yeah, so that's my plug for, it's also called Lift the Bridge on all socials, or on several socials. We're working on it. And it's Cosmere Nerds for Mental Health on Patreon. Please consider joining. And let's get into the iridescent tones. So, of all of the religions in the Cosmere, the iridescent tones are easily the most narratively relevant. The whole story, I mean, it's the only, like, full POV that we get through the eyes of a god in the religion, right? And we watch him, we get one POV. We meet a ton of gods. And by the way, this video will have spoilers for Warbreaker. It'll have some spoilers for Mistborn Era 1. And I think that's it. I'll give you a heads up if there's any more. I will say one thing that I'm really pumped to talk about this religion for, because we spoke about the Steel Ministry last, there are a lot of things that are linked between the two and that really make me feel like there's a lot going on there. So there's a huge theory reveal coming later in this video. We're going to be diving deep into my Pepe Sylvia red string moment that I've been having all year so far about NALTHIS and SCADRIAL. So stay tuned for that. Okay. Yeah, so Iridescent Tones, the history of the Iridescent Tones is so rich and so new. It's only been a few hundred years. And it's, well, it gets a little bit more complicated than that. There is the real history, and then there is the religious history, very similar to what we covered in the Steel Ministry video. So the first thing that we're going to go over is kind of understanding the origins of the religion. While we spend so much time in this religious headspace, like as religion is so prevalent in Warbreaker between Austrism and Iridescent Tones, we really don't know too much about what's really happening. I assume that we will one day get a little bit more context about that through things like talking to Vasher, but I don't know, maybe not. And we may never get the prequel about Nightblood, and we may never get the sequels about what's happening in Hallandren, so that's frustrating in and of its own right. But we can fill in the blanks as best we can with the information we have in the meantime. So, carrying on, the Iridescent Tones were established in Hallandren not long after the mini-war, because the people of Hallandren believed that they had been forsaken by Austra. We should probably talk about Austrism really quickly. So I've got my notes over here. I'm not cheating. These are notes I wrote myself through research, through the books, and also I did refer to the Coppermine several times. We love the folks of the Coppermine. Please consider subscribing for at least $1 a month to their Patreon. It's expensive running a website like the Coppermine, running a fan wiki. So please consider doing that. They're really good for our community. So, understanding Austrism. It's based on the visions of Vo, who was the first returned. He returned, he lived for a week, he gave his visions, and then he died. And the biggest belief was that this was Astra being this singular force. Astra is described as a force, not a man, not a person. We are not able to really put together who Astra might be. If it's Endowment, we don't really know. So that's kind of difficult. But Austrism believes in things like it's not good to be ostentatious and you can't wear color because color is sacred and it's blasphemous otherwise. And they also, some of the visions are also, or the teachings are that you can't and shouldn't be judgmental of people and don't cast the first stone kind of energy. And yet we do see that happening quite often from some of our more pious people. So that is important to understand about where Austrism came from. Austrism is completely different from what we see with the Iridescent Tones later. The Iridescent Tones was birthed from the Cult of the Returned, which existed at the time of the mini-war. And then grew in prevalence as the people of Hallandren, what that time Hanald, wanted to split from the people of what would become Idris because of feeling as if they were forsaken by Astra. So let's get into that. So today we're not going to really dive too deep into the mini-war. I do plan on doing a larger history of NALTHIS, a bigger NALTHIS video eventually. I'm really hoping that they'll let me do my Everything is NALTHIS panel at Dragonsteel this year. Petition. Write a petition. I and Jason have applied for it. So please. Okay. So what do the believers of the Iridescent Tones believe? They believe that Peacegiver is they refer to him as Lord Peacegiver or Peacegiver the Blessed. They believe that he gave life to the people of Hallandren, that he returned solely to stop the conflict of the mini-war, which is what he did. They also believe that he, which I guess this is true, Peacegiver, gave his store of breaths. It's called Peacegiver's treasure. Peacegiver's treasure. He gave his store of breaths to the first God King, a priest named Susebron. And the whole thing about it was that it's a store of easily the 10th heightening, like several thousand, tens of thousands of breaths, over 50,000. And that it was given to him because to be held on to for Peacegiver, for when he one day would return. So it's a store of 50,000 breaths, and it cannot be used, which is part of why they cut the tongues out of the God Kings as history goes on, so that they can't. Even though at the 10th heightening, you don't need a tongue to use your breath or to give your breath away. But if they don't know that, they can't do it, because it's all about what? Intent. Isn't it always? So, yeah. Peacegiver the Blessed is why we have God Kings. Because of this as well, over this several hundred years, 300 years, the God King has been receiving multiple breaths a week to sustain it and to add to the store. So imagine if it was 50,000 breaths 300 years ago, and it has been passed down for generations. There's only been so many God Kings because they live so long because of the heightening that they are. But like they get 2 or more breaths a week, depending, which is adding and just creating. I mean, it is just it's a super weapon. It's a super weapon. So that's that. Now, Peacegiver, of course, is their like god. They love Peacegiver. Then you have Khalad. Khalad is representative of evil and destruction in the faith of the Iridescent Tones. That's why they curse by his phantoms, Khalad's phantoms. Khalad's phantoms were, no one knows exactly in the present day, but we do know that the Khalad's phantoms are a army of lifeless that were left behind by him. And that is what is, as we see the statues in Teteller. But that's why they curse by Khalad's phantoms, as if they are these monsters hiding in the forests and jungles around Teteller. It is interesting as well. Well, we'll get into the truth later. But there are some interesting things about Khalad and Peacegiver that we might know. One of the reasons why the split happened after the mini-war is because the royal family, what would become the Idrians, had sided with Khalad in the mini-war, which caused a lot of destruction for several reasons. So, another belief that they have, and this is perhaps one of my favorite things that they believe because of some other evidence that we get later in the Cosmere, is they believe in the iridescent wave. So when you die, you jump over the iridescent wave. And over the iridescent wave, the future, all of time exists on like this long tapestry scroll. And it is because of this that when returned, when they die, they see the future laid out before them, and they see the thing that they need to come back for, the miracle that they need to perform in the future, and they jump back over the iridescent wave. Jumping back over the iridescent wave to come back does cause them to lose their memories, which is part of why they have these dreams and why they get these petitions. We'll talk about those more in a second, to try to help them remember. Now, what is interesting, there's some interesting quotes about the iridescent wave. I like the way that Larimar describes it, so I'm going to read a quote from him. So, he says to Lightsong, when Lightsong's talking about how he doesn't have his memory, the way Larimar describes it is, "The thing is, Your Grace, returned aren't meant to stay. We extend their lives, giving them extra time to bless us, but they're really only supposed to remain alive as long as it takes them to do what they need to do. Returned have goals, objectives which are their own. You knew of yours before you decided to come back, but the process of leaping across the iridescent wave leaves the memory fragmented. Stay long enough, and you'll remember what you came to accomplish. The petitions, they're a way of helping you to remember. Someday, once you feel that you've accomplished your task, you can use the petitions to find someone who deserves your breath. Then you can continue your journey across the iridescent wave. Our job as your followers is to provide breath for you and keep you alive until you can accomplish your goal, whatever it may be. In the meantime, we pry for auguries and blessings, which can be gleaned only from one who has touched the future, as you have. I just love it. I just love the idea of the iridescent wave. And here's the reason why. I love it because I like the idea of it. But one thing that's really interesting is we learn in Isles of the Emberdark that Ed describes, I think it's Ed, it might be Starling, one of the characters describes the subastrals of different planets and describes NALTHIS' subastral as being like this inky color everywhere, explosions of color, which is magnificent when you think about the fact that if the people believe in this iridescent wave, they're actually thinking of the cognitive realm. There's been either that has created the iridescent wave, like the cognitive power of the people thinking that you jump over the iridescent wave, you jump over this stream of color, or it's that a returned at some time has remembered seeing the cognitive realm and not knowing what to call it, So, which I just love. I love that it's like we have actual textual evidence that there is an iridescent wave. Like, it's actually happening. I just love that. Okay, so continuing on about returned are cognitive shadows, which no need to go any further into that. I can point you to the Cosmere Academy or Jasonian if you want more information on cognitive shadows. That's not the point of this video, but one day we'll probably talk about it. So let's talk about these cognitive shadows. They die in some way that exemplifies, allegedly, some, like, an admirable human attribute. This idea of bravery or honesty or kindness or leadership or etc. But at other times, there's other ways. I do think that we do know of one returned who is such and such the proud, which is like, is that really a good thing? But they die and they come back returned as the god of that thing. And so it is whatever it is. So Blushweaver is the returned, the goddess of honesty and open communication. So we can assume that in her life, she had died in some way that exemplified those things, perhaps speaking honestly despite how it might have ended her life or what have you. Telling the truth in a time where it might have been scary to do so. Lightsong, we know how Lightsong died. He became Lightsong the Bold because he risked his life or lost his life to save his favorite niece. So, which is beautiful and interesting because they're not very arbitrary. Like, it is clear that there is some kind of a selection process. We just don't know what it is. But they return because they exemplify that thing, and they are returned with one purpose to accomplish, to give their breath for, or to do and then give their breath for so that they can die. But to be kept alive so they can do that, they have these priests and these sub-priests and the different layers of priests in their retinues and followers who give them gifts, and they are kind of, it is interesting, they're very much like returned are gods, but also kind of servants of the people. In a lot of ways. So they receive offerings from people which grant the sender good fortune. And then the priests record what the returned says about it, and that determines kind of ill luck or good luck, depending, for that person. Lightsong has this really interesting part about how he's received some of these offerings, and it is clear that some of these offerings are also commissions, which feels slimy to commission someone else to do a thing on your behalf so that you will get good fortune, which is kind of everything that's wrong with things like this, paying your way to heaven kind of deals. So that's pretty icky. Those commissions, it'll be like, create a beautiful painting for me to send to a god, and then it's It's yucky. But yeah, so they hear petitions from people to use their breath. All of these lines of people who come, hey, please give your breath to save my life. Please give your breath to save my daughter's life. I have XYZ thing that I need to accomplish. I'm very sick. Whatever. And more often than not, of course, they are rejected, which is sad. But they also, these breaths that they receive, the people are very well compensated for giving their breaths, which causes those people to become dull, which is a whole other thing, the nature of breath in that way. So the returned also act as leadership, act as a government, a parliament. They vote on issues, they debate issues, their priests debate for them depending on the level of issues, and their votes help determine what is happening in their kingdom. There's this really interesting thing as well with the God King. He knows virtually nothing about the actual state of affairs within his kingdom. The returned and the priests of the returned and the God King have much more of a hand in what is actually happening politically and socially in Hallandren, just kind of across the nation. So yeah, the gods, they are divided into these subgroups, and they all have different opportunities or different responsibilities over different areas. They also, several of them, as a whole plot point in Warbreaker, is the returned having different, 4 of the returned having access codes to sections of the Lifeless Army. That is a huge part of the plot in Warbreaker, and it's because those returned were deemed to be worthy of that responsibility. But yeah, when they make decisions, when they reach decisions, it is known as the will of the Pantheon. So I do think that's interesting. Yeah, I also really I pulled a few quotes that are between Lightsong and Blushweaver about the returned that I want to read. So Lightsong says of the returned, they're lazy. They want others to make the difficult decisions. That's what the system encourages, Blushweaver. We're all locked in here, expected to spend our time in idleness and pleasure, and then we're supposed to know what is best for our country? He shook his head. We're more afraid of the outside than we're willing to admit. All we have are artworks and dreams. That's why you and I ended up with these armies. Nobody else wants to be the one who actually sends our troops out to kill and die. They all want to be involved, but nobody wants to be responsible. I love it because they have these very comfortable lives. Why would they want to know more? You know what I mean? I really like how Lightsong articulates it. Later in this chapter, Blushweaver and him have this exchange, which I love because Lightsong is the one who allegedly cares the least, but clearly cares the most. We just love Lightsong. But Blushweaver says to him, I brought you into this. You always talk about being useless, but we all know that you're one of the few who always goes through every picture, sculpture, and tapestry in his gallery. The one who hears every poem and song. The one who listens most deeply to the pleas of his petitioners. And he responds, You are all fools. There is nothing in me to respect. And she says, No. You're the one who makes us laugh, even while you insult us. Can't you see what that does? Can't you see how you've inadvertently set yourself above everyone else? You didn't do it intentionally, Lightsong, and that's what makes it work so well. In a city of frivolity, you're the only one who's shown any measure of wisdom. In my opinion, that's why you hold the armies. I love this exchange between them, and I love these moments of depth from Blushweaver because she wants you to believe that she's not deep, that she's not present, that she's not forming thoughts like this. She wants to be calculated and to get what she needs, but she also wants to be perceived as not a threat. And I love Blushweaver so much. I love Warbreaker. It's time for another reread. Anyway, moving forward, we are going to go into the priesthood now. So, this is where things get really interesting to me. The priesthood, many of them have religious duties, but they also run the nation. They also have the clerical duties, the administrative duties, etc., around running a government. They run everything. They run all the institutions. They have specific ways that they dress and different colors that they wear. The priests of the returned wear the colors of their god. The priests of the God King wear a different color every day. The high priests, each of the returned, including the God King, has a high priest. And they are almost always with their gods. So for Lightsong, it's Larimar. And they are one of the few priests that are allowed to see the offerings that are given to the returned as well. And sometimes they are the ones as well who are arguing on behalf of the returned, or just otherwise arguing. And now that we've briefly touched on that, we can get to the thing I really want to talk about, which is my theory. So, my theory. In an epigraph in Hero of Ages, the third book in the Mistborn trilogy, there's this very curious line, curious to me, where our Hero of Ages is writing the words of founding and says that the Lord Ruler based the structure of the Steel Ministry off of a people known as the HALLANT people, HALLANT, who were obsessed with weights and measures and permissions, etc. And I thought, HALLANT, Hallandren, HALLANT, how funny. And it's in an epigraph, it's not a huge amount of attention called to it, but why mention it at all? Seems strange. You're not going to tell us anything else about these classical SCADRIAL nations and peoples, so why would you mention that, Brandon? I know why you mentioned it. It's an Easter egg. Do you know what the Easter egg is? HALLANT has the same root as Hallandren, and I'm not going to do this phonetic, means this, or whatever. I'm not going to do that with you. This is an intentional, writerly thing, in my opinion. I don't care about the timelines. There's time dilation around all of these effing planets, okay? I'm telling you that there is a connection here. I'm not saying that all Nalthians are world hoppers or something. I'm not saying that that's the case, but I am saying that there is some kind of a seed that had to have been planted on SCADRIAL, potentially by Endowment, potentially, or someone else, that created a culture that would rise up the way that it did, create a whole nation of peoples and a whole government and structure societally that so clearly is relevant to what's happening in Hallandren years later. Hallandren, of course, split off from Hanald, but why didn't it just stay Hanald? Why did it become Hallandren? We don't have any idea why they changed the name to Hallandren, but it has the same root. I recognize that is during the Mini-War, which is 300 years prior to the events of Warbreaker, and HALLANT existed 1,020-something years before the events of the Mistborn original trilogy, but that doesn't mean that there's not a common link, a common ancestor, a common shard seeding influence in different places, okay? What are the similarities, you ask? They both have an eternal God King or Lord Ruler, which are synonyms, by the way, that are real-life physical people in their space that rule over them, that they see as both their god and their ruler. They both have priests that run their societies almost entirely. Really interesting, isn't it? How interesting that the cultures, that the society, the structure in that way is so similar. And then you think, oh, wait a second. Is there anything else to back up this theory? The answer is yes. Okay, in Trelegism, way back in ancient SCADRIAL, Trelegism was what we find out in Era 2 becomes Trelism, the idea of the many eyes of Trell. We find out that is Bovidin, that's autonomy. that has seeded some influence on SCADRIAL. We have WOBs from Brandon confirming that several shards have visited SCADRIAL in some way. And the alternate ending of the second book, Well of Ascension, has Endowment in it. It's the alternate ending. It's the alternate ending, so it's not canon. But Brandon was gonna put her there. How the hell did she know what was going on? Okay, I mean, shards are their own thing. But the reason why I bring up Trelegism is because in Trelegism, in ancient SCADRIAL, there was this belief. There were two gods, kind of, in Trelegism. There was Trell and his brother, Nalt. N-A-L-T. And Trell was the night. Trell was the stars. And Nalt was the sun. And Trell hated his brother, Nalt, for always outshining him. And so, for those people, the Trelegists, they believed in worshipping the night and that the stars, that the sun was profane and that the stars were this beautiful, amazing thing. And that's why they had star charts, and that's how the Hero of Ages knew how to fix the planet, blah, blah, blah. If there was Trelegism on SCADRIAL that believed in this other god, Nalt, very likely there was a whole other religion dedicated to Nalt that worshipped the sun, right? And what does that mean? It means that Endowment is everywhere. Endowment, because Brandon has been asked if Endowment and Bovidin are sisters, and he has raffoed that question. He's raffoed it. Why? Why? Because they are. Because they're sisters. That's my answer. Because they are sisters. Because they are sisters, and it's going to be a race to the end of the Cosmere between the two of them. Endowment is going to be the key to kicking Trell's ass. Sorry. Autonomy's ass. I just know it. I know it. She's everywhere. She has a plan. She's going to save us all. I'm very obsessed with Endowment, if you can't tell. But that's my big theory. And I think I'm right. I think I'm right, damn it. I know I'm right. Oh, calm down. I know I'm right. You have to believe me. Please. It's okay. You do believe me, because I just provided you with a lot of great evidence. So, I guess let's get back to the video. Guys, my heart is beating so fast. I'm so excited about it. I know I'm right. Of all of my theories that I have, narratively or just in general about the Cosmere, this is certainly the nicest one. This is certainly the one that is the most positive, so I really hope it's true. Endowment, Edgley will save us all. It's pronounced Edgley, by the way. Word straight from Brandon, so don't come at me about that. It's pronounced Edgley. Okay. On to the next. What is the truth of this religion? What is really happening? Well, with the return, we still don't really know. It could be that Endowment is specifically choosing these people and that she is specifically showing them the future and allowing them to decide to come back or making them come back. I don't know. I'm assuming she has something to do with the process, but that's a pretty hands-on. I mean, not, people don't return every single day, but that seems pretty hands-on, which is why I'm not quite sold on that idea, but could all just be predetermined. Oh, sorry, another thing, back to my theory. They are the only two planets in which there is a hereditary component to the magic system that we know of, in which the people probably were biologically created in some way by their shards. Anyway, okay, back to this. Yeah, so basically, could be preordained, each person by Endowment. We do know that the shards have some level of future sight, through things like the spiritual realm, so maybe. And then we also know another thing that we know that is true history and not the religious history is that Peacegiver and Khalad are the same person. Peacegiver was not a new returned. It was just Vasher being like, actually, I have noticed the error of my ways and this needs to end. And he put an end to the war. But everyone was convinced. He convinced the world that he was a different person. And that version of him, Khalad, was deemed as evil, which is something that I think is really interesting, and maybe we'll get into eventually, is all of these different beliefs about Vasher, about his several different identities. I think his first returned name was Strife Lover, which, yeah, I believe it. I think like all these different opinions of him and all these different identities he has, how that interacts with his cognitive aspect after several hundred years. I'm really curious about that. I really want to know more about the scholars, the 5 scholars. And the 5 scholars also were very much a part of what was happening with the mini-war. The 5 scholars were on different sides of the battle. This is when Nightblood was used for the first time. Shashara and Vasher had created Nightblood fashioned after shard blades that they'd seen on Roshar. Or honor blades. Shard blades or honor blades, or both? Whatever. But they were fashioned. He was fashioned after those, and then awakened him with the command, destroy evil, which, of course, I'm very curious. I will kind of leave my thoughts on Nightblood's creation up in the air at this time, because Jasonian, my podcast co-host for We Know More Than Is Healthy About the Cosmere, the podcast, which is featured exclusive on Cosmere Nerds for Mental Health Patreon. So you want to be there, I promise. He has a video coming out about Nightblood very soon, in which I am featured talking about Shashara's intent when creating Nightblood and my opinions on that. And I think that you should just go watch that video because it's going to be amazing. And my art's going to be in it too, which is cool. But yeah, so the 5 scholars were on these several different sides. Shashara wields Nightblood at the Battle of Twilight Falls, and it evaporates so many people on both sides of the conflict, and then still wants to teach the world how to create that same kind of technology, which of course Vasher says no and kills his wife, Shashara, to keep her from doing it, which is kind of really horrible, but also maybe necessary. So that's what's the deal with them. They had taught people about things like how to make a lifeless with very few breaths, how created ichor alcohol to keep them running so that you wouldn't have to keep making new ones. These super armies, basically. So scary. Yeah. The truth about the God King. I mean, I have a note here that says that, and I feel like I already kind of went over it. The God King is is often, but not always, a stillborn baby that returns. And that's still I'm kind of unsure about. But he there's elements of it. There's this passage in the Coppermind that I think is just wrong. I think it's always a stillborn baby, but there's a passage in the Coppermind that talks about if he can't conceive. But if he can't conceive, then they wait for a stillborn baby to be returned. And it's but he can't conceive, so what do you mean they actually do want her to get pregnant? The way it's worded is kind of strange. But if he can't conceive, then what the hell? So I think it's just worded strangely on the Coppermind, perhaps. And yeah, the God King, I mean, the thing is the thing that's frustrating about the God King is they cut out his tongue, but if he knew of his power, he doesn't need it. He can command with his mind. So what's the point? What's the point? What are my unanswered questions about the iridescent tones? Everything. Not everything, but my unanswered questions about the iridescent tones are mostly just my unanswered questions about endowment. which I have a ton of, and I just can't wait to get more information. I'm hoping that with Fires of December that we'll get something about her. I don't think that I don't think it's NALTHIS that book is taking place on. Feel free to hold that against me in the future if I'm wrong. But if it is, maybe we'll learn some things about my queen, who's going to save the Cosmere. Yeah, I mean, generally, okay. I love the Iridescent Tones. I love Warbreaker. I'm excited about this, and I want to say thank you if you've watched all the way through. Thank you for being patient with me. My transition into this new job has been crazy, but I love this topic. I love talking about these things, and I want to talk about them more, and I want to be more consistent. So soon, I will be sure to have more up for us, and get back on track with making content, because I think I was really starting to feel like I had to do it at a certain level, but in reality, like, we just like to sit down and talk. I like to sit down and talk, and several of you like to sit down and listen. So thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. I really, really, really am pumped to hear your thoughts on the Iridescent Tones and to continue discussing this in the comment section and just elsewhere. I'm going to post some reels from this so that we can talk about it on like TikTok and Instagram and stuff. I think it's just so cool. I think that Iridescent Tones are just so cool. And I think that the returned and the implication of the return, such as if they come back with a specific goal in mind, what's Vasher's? Does Vasher have a miracle he's not yet performed? And if not, what will he spend his divine breath on? He's sitting on something pretty valuable. So I'm really fascinated to learn more about that. It's like Chekhov's miracle, Chekhov's returned goal. Waiting to find out what's going to happen with Vasher. So, in conclusion, thank you for watching. Thank you for being here. Thank you for enjoying the things that we talk about with each other. Thank you. Thank you. And our next religion is going to be probably the One. I think we're going to talk about the One next, because I think Vorinism is going to take a long time. Vorinism is going to take a long time. Or tell me what you think. Should we do Vorinism by itself eventually, or should we do like all Rosharan religions in one master video? That could be 5 hours long. Man. Okay. Thank you for participating. Thank you for watching. Let me know what you think, and subscribe to the Cosmere Nerds Patreon. Find me on other socials. Commission a shard blade from me if you want. Yeah. Thanks for hanging. Mwah.